Driver laughs at dirty passenger, not knowing he owns the fleet of cars he drives. Michael Johnson couldn't stop laughing as he glanced in the rearview mirror. The man who had just entered his car had clothes completely stained with grease and oil, his hands still dark despite attempts to clean them. Just another one of those workers who didn't even have the decency to clean up before calling a car. "Man, you really have no consideration, do you?" Michael said, opening the glove compartment and pulling out an old towel. "Here, put this on the seat before sitting down. My car isn't a junkyard." The passenger, a black man around 45, simply smiled and took the towel. "I'm really sorry, my friend. I just helped an elderly lady on the road. Her car broke down and—" Yeah, everyone's got an excuse," Michael interrupted, turning the air conditioning to full blast. "I hope you at least have money to pay for the ride. And just so you know, I'm charging extra for the cleaning I'll have to do after." The man in the back didn't respond, just entered the address into the app and settled in quietly. Michael noticed through the mirror that the passenger was carrying an expensive phone, which annoyed him even more. If he had money for a phone like that, why didn't he take better care of himself? "Could you take me to Fifth Avenue, please?" the passenger said calmly. "Fifth Avenue? You work there?" Michael couldn't hide his mocking tone. "Let me guess, janitor in some office building?" "Something like that," the man replied, looking back at his phone. During the ride, Michael couldn't stay quiet. He was the type who loved talking about himself, especially when he felt superior. "You know, I'm not going to be doing this forever," he began, speeding up to pass a bus. "I've got plans. Soon I'll have my own fleet of cars. I know important people, you get me. So I'm not like these other drivers who spend their whole lives working for others." "Is that so? How interesting," the passenger replied, genuinely curious. "How does that fleet business work?" Michael got excited. Finally, someone was interested in his grand plans. "Well, it's complicated for people like you to understand. It's a world of business, contracts, strategic partnerships. You need vision, you know, the right connections. It's not for everyone." "And how do you plan to get the startup money?" "Ah, that's the trick." Michael lowered his voice as if sharing a secret. "I know some guys who work for the company managing fleets in this area. They told me there are big changes coming. Those who position themselves right will get rich." The passenger nodded with interest, asking more questions about how the business worked. Michael, feeling important, explained his plans in detail, including how he intended to get rid of the more problematic drivers once he was the owner. "Here's the thing, my friend," Michael said, stopping at a red light and turning to look at the passenger. "In this business, you gotta know who to hire. You can't just take anyone. You need standards, presentation. Imagine a guy like you representing my company. Customers would run for the hills." The man in the back smiled again, but this time Michael noticed something different in his smile. There was a hint of irony he couldn't quite place. "I see your point," the passenger said. "First impressions really do matter in business." "Exactly." Michael grew even more animated. "That's why I always dress sharp, keep my car clean, smelling nice. It's the difference between a professional and an amateur." They arrived at the destination, an elegant office building on Fifth Avenue. Michael looked at the building, then at the passenger, confused. "Are you sure this is the place? This building is for big companies only." "I'm sure, yes," the man replied, stepping out of the car. Michael checked the fare on the app and rounded it up. It came to $43, but with the cleaning fee it's $50. The passenger paid without question, and even left a $10 tip. "Thank you so much for the conversation, Michael. It was very enlightening." Michael found it odd that the man knew his name but then remembered it was on the app. He watched the passenger enter the building and shook his head. "Must be a doorman or something," he muttered, starting the car. At least he paid properly. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Michael woke up in a good mood. He had earned well the day before and was excited about his expansion plans. He took a long shower, styled his hair with gel, chose his best shirt, and headed out to work. Around 10 in the morning, he received a message on the app that left him confused. It was a notification to attend an urgent meeting at the headquarters of the company, managing the fleet of partner drivers in the region. Urgent meeting? He murmured, reading the message twice. Must be about those changes my contacts mentioned. Michael felt excited. Maybe this was his chance to impress the bosses and secure a better position in the company. He tidied himself up further and drove to the given address. The company's headquarters was in a modern building in downtown New York City. Michael had never been there before and was impressed by the luxury of the place. Marble floors, expensive furniture, well-dressed employees. It was exactly the kind of environment he saw himself working in someday. At the reception, an elegant woman checked his name on the list and directed him to the meeting room on the 12th floor. Michael rode the elevator feeling important. Finally, he was being recognized. The meeting room was spacious with a large glass table and leather chairs. 5 other drivers were already waiting, all with the same mix of curiosity and anxiety. Michael greeted a few acquaintances and took a seat near the head of the table. "Does anyone know what this meeting is about?" one of the drivers asked. "Probably about the management changes," Michael replied with an air of someone who knew important things. "I've heard they're restructuring everything here." Just then, the door opened, and a woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed and carrying a folder of documents, entered. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Thompson, the HR manager. Thank you for coming so quickly." Michael straightened in his chair, ready to impress. "As you may have guessed, there will be significant changes in the management of our outsourced fleet," Sarah continued. "We've had a major acquisition, and the new director would like to meet some of our partner drivers." "Acquisition?" Michael asked. "Was the company sold?" "Actually, our company was purchased by a larger group that will now manage the entire ride-hailing vehicle fleet in the New York City metropolitan area. It's a very positive change for all of us." Michael's heart raced. If a bigger company was taking over, his chances of moving up had just skyrocketed. "And when do we meet this new director?" he asked, adjusting his tie. "Right now," Sarah replied, glancing at the door. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce the new Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Robert Williams." The door opened and Michael felt the world spin. The man who walked in, now impeccably dressed in an expensive suit and silk tie, was the same dirty passenger from the day before. Robert Williams walked with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge, greeting everyone in the room with a firm handshake. When it was Michael's turn, Robert stopped and smiled. "Hello, Michael. It's good to see you again." Michael was pale, his voice stuck in his throat. He could only stammer, "Sir, Yesterday we had a very interesting conversation about fleet management, didn't we?" Robert said, keeping his tone friendly, but with a peculiar glint in his eyes. "You had some strong opinions about how to choose drivers for a company." The silence in the room was uncomfortable. The other drivers glanced between Michael and Robert, trying to understand the situation. Robert walked to the head of the table and opened a presentation on the screen. "Well, everyone, as Sarah explained, we've taken over the management of one of the largest ride-hailing fleets in the region. That means all of you now work indirectly for me." Michael felt sweat trickling down his back. He remembered every disrespectful word he had said the day before. "Our work philosophy is quite simple," Robert continued. "We believe respect and dignity should be the foundation of any professional relationship. It doesn't matter where someone comes from, how they look, or their social status. What matters is character and dedication to the job." Robert clicked to the next slide, which showed driver performance statistics. "That's why we're implementing a new evaluation system. In addition to traditional criteria like punctuality and safety, we'll include passenger feedback on kindness and respect in service." Michael swallowed hard. His ratings weren't the best due to a few customer complaints. "We're also creating a personal and professional development program for all partner drivers," Robert went on. "Some of you will attend special training on workplace ethics and interpersonal skills." Sarah picked up a list and began reading names. "The drivers selected for the first round of the program are Michael Johnson Smith, Anthony Brooks, Frank Oliver." Michael heard his name and felt a tightness in his chest. This wasn't a promotion, it was punishment. Robert looked directly at Michael. "The program will be intensive. You'll spend a week working in different departments to better understand our operations, including a few days at our partner auto repair shops." The irony was cruel. Michael, who had mocked mechanics, would now have to work as one. "Any questions?" Robert asked. Michael wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain it had all been a misunderstanding. But the words wouldn't come. After the meeting, when the other drivers had left, Robert approached Michael. "Would you like to speak with me privately?" Michael nodded, still in shock. "Mr. Robert, about yesterday, it was a mistake." Robert raised his hand, cutting him off. "Michael, you were very clear about your opinions yesterday. You said people like me shouldn't represent a company, that customers would run away, remember? I didn't know you were... And would that have changed anything?" Robert sat in a nearby chair. "You disrespected me because you thought I was just a dirty mechanic. If you'd known who I was, would you have treated me differently?" Michael lowered his head, speechless. "Let me tell you something, Michael. I started working as a mechanic at 15. My mother was a maid. My father died when I was a child. I spent years with grease on my hands, looked down on by people like you." Robert stood and walked to the window. "I studied at night, got my degree in business, and opened my first shop at 25. Today, I own a network of 200 shops across 5 states, and I just bought this company. But I still go to the workshops, I still get my hands dirty when I need to, because I never forgot where I came from." Michael felt smaller by the second. "The program you're joining isn't a punishment, Michael. It's an opportunity, a chance for you to learn what it really means to work with dignity." "Mr. Robert, Call me Robert. And think carefully about what you're going to say next, because your words will decide whether you keep working with us or not." Michael took a deep breath. For the first time in his life, he was being forced to confront his own prejudices. "I was an idiot yesterday, completely out of line. You treated me with respect even when I was being disrespectful. I deserve this chance you're giving me." Robert studied him for a few seconds. "The program starts Monday, 6 in the morning at Mr. Walter's workshop in Williamsburg. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. And Michael?" "Yes, sir?" "I hope you learn that a person's worth isn't in the clothes they wear, but in the heart they carry." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Michael left the meeting completely shaken. He drove through the streets of New York City with no destination in mind, trying to process what had just happened. How had he been so blind? How had he not realized he was talking to someone clearly intelligent and successful? He got home in the middle of the afternoon and found his wife, Jennifer, tending to the garden. Married for 18 years, she knew her husband's flaws well, especially his habit of judging people by appearances. "How was work today?" Jennifer asked without looking up from the flowers. Michael sat on the porch, still dazed. "Jennifer, something happened today." He told her everything. The passenger from the day before, the meeting, the discovery that Robert was the new head of the entire fleet. Jennifer listened in silence, but Michael could see the disappointment in her eyes. "Michael, how many times have I warned you about this habit of judging people?" she finally said, turning to face him. "How many times have I asked you to stop with those prejudiced comments?" I know, but this time is different. This guy could fire me, Jennifer. He could ruin our livelihood." "And that's the only reason you're worried? Because he could hurt you?" Michael fell silent. Her question had struck a nerve. Was he truly sorry for his behavior, or just afraid of the consequences? "No, it's not just that," he began, but stopped. Truthfully, he wasn't sure. Jennifer shook her head and went back inside. Michael stayed alone on the porch, reflecting on his life. At 42, he had always considered himself successful. He owned a home, a car, had a family. But for the first time, he was questioning what kind of person he really was. That evening at dinner, his 16-year-old daughter, Melissa, mentioned a school project. "Dad, I'm working on an assignment about workplace discrimination. Can you help me?" Michael nearly choked on his food. "What kind of assignment?" "It's about how people are judged by their appearance or social background. There are so many cases of qualified people missing opportunities just because they didn't fit the expected profile." Jennifer gave Michael a pointed look. "Is that so?" he said, uneasy. What have you found? That it's way more common than you'd think. Some companies won't even call people for interviews if their name or address sounds suspicious. Others reject candidates based on looks. It's really sad, Dad. Michael felt a lump in his throat. His own daughter was talking about the exact kind of behavior he had displayed the day before. And do you think this is common? Unfortunately, yes. But I've also come across incredible stories of people who overcame these prejudices and became very successful. One of the stories that impressed me the most is about a businessman who started as a mechanic and now owns one of the largest auto repair chains in the country. Michael dropped his fork onto the plate. What do you mean? Robert Williams. He's giving a talk at our school next month. He's an amazing man, Dad. Started from the bottom, faced a lot of prejudice, but never gave up. Now he employs thousands of people and runs incredible social projects. Michael turned pale. Robert Williams was going to his daughter's school. Melissa kept talking about the businessman with admiration, unaware that her father had humiliated that very person the day before. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about how he would explain to Melissa that he had disrespected the very man she admired. How could he look his daughter in the eye, knowing he had failed to be the example she deserved? By Sunday, he decided he needed to do something. He couldn't just wait for Monday to come and participate in the program as if nothing had happened. He needed to understand who Robert Williams really was. He spent hours researching online. What he found only made him more ashamed. Robert had indeed started as a mechanic, lost his father at 12, and supported his family by working in repair shops since his teens. He studied mechanical engineering at night while working during the day. At 30, he opened his first shop with borrowed money. Now, besides his chain of auto shops, he ran social inclusion programs, scholarships for underprivileged youth, and a foundation helping vulnerable families. One article made Michael stop everything. Robert had created a program offering job opportunities to former inmates, homeless individuals, and people with disabilities. The headline read, "For Robert Williams, everyone deserves a second chance." Michael closed his laptop and sat in silence. Everyone deserves a second chance. Was Robert offering that to him? Monday came faster than Michael would have liked. At 5:40 a.m., he stood outside Mr. Walter's repair shop in Williamsburg. It was a simple but clean and well-organized place. 4 other drivers were already at the door, all with the same nervous expression. At least I'm not alone in this, Michael thought. At exactly 6, Robert arrived driving a modest car, wearing jeans and a work shirt, nothing that hinted at his success as a businessman. "Good morning, everyone. Ready to learn?" Michael and the others mumbled a response. "I'll introduce you to Mr. Walter, who'll be supervising you this week. He has 40 years of experience in mechanics and is one of the wisest people I know." Mr. Walter was a black man around 60, with graying hair and hands calloused from work. He greeted each driver firmly but warmly. "Welcome to my shop. Here you'll learn that honest work is honest work, no matter what it is." Robert said his goodbyes, but before leaving, he approached Michael. "Remember what we talked about first impressions," he whispered. "Don't judge Mr. Walter by appearances. He has a lot to teach you." Then he left, leaving Michael to his thoughts. The first day was brutal. Mr. Walter split the drivers into pairs and assigned them as assistants to the mechanics. Michael was paired with a young man named Brandon, who couldn't have been older than 20. "First time in a repair shop?" Brandon asked, handing Michael a wrench. "Yeah, this isn't really my thing." "Relax, man. Everyone starts somewhere. I started here at 16, right out of school. Today I'm studying engineering at night school." Michael looked at Brandon with interest. The young man spoke about his studies and work with a maturity that impressed him. "Engineering? That's great. Yeah, Mr. Robert pays for my school, pays for my... There's a scholarship for employees who want to study. The nicest guy I've ever met. Do you know Robert well?" "I do. He comes here at least once a week, always helps when needed. Sometimes he stays late fixing cars with us. Never seen a boss like him." Michael spent the whole day observing the dynamics of the shop. Everyone treated Robert with respect, but also with affection. It wasn't fear of authority, it was genuine admiration. At lunch, Mr. Walter called the drivers over for a talk. "You're here because someone thought you needed to learn something. I don't know what each of you did, but I can guarantee one thing. If Robert brought you here, it's because he believes you can change." Michael raised his hand timidly. "Mr. Walter, can I ask a question?" "Of course, son. Have you worked with Robert for a long time?" Mr. Walter smiled. "I've known Robert since he was 17. He worked at a shop nearby, was my competitor. But he was always different from the others, never tried to undermine me, always did business the right way." "Different how?" "Respectful, humble. When he opened his first shop, he came to me for advice. Imagine that, a young guy full of energy, asking for help from an old man like me. That stays with you." Michael was starting to understand the kind of person Robert really was. "And when he got rich, did he change?" "Oh, he changed all right," said Mr. Walter, surprising Michael. "He got even better. The more money he makes, the more he helps others. It's like success awakened in him an even greater desire to do good." By the end of the first day, Michael was exhausted. His clothes were stained with oil, his hands scratched, his body aching. But there was something different, a feeling he couldn't quite name. When he got home, Jennifer greeted him with a teasing smile. "How was your first day of punishment?" "Actually, it was better than I expected." Michael took a shower, and over dinner, he told his family about his experience at the shop. He talked about Brandon, about Mr. Walter, about how it felt to work with his hands. "Dad, you seem different," said Melissa. "Different how?" "More humble?" Michael smiled. Maybe Melissa was right. The following days at the shop were eye-opening. Michael heard incredible stories of perseverance. There were mechanics supporting entire families, young people studying at night for a better career, older men who had raised children through honest work. On Wednesday, Robert showed up at the shop in the afternoon, not to supervise, but to help with a tricky job. Michael watched him work side by side with the mechanics, his hands dirty, his face focused. During a break, Robert approached Michael. "How's the experience been?" "Enlightening," Michael answered honestly. "I'm learning a lot about myself." "And what are you learning?" Michael thought before replying. "That I had a very narrow view of what success means. I thought it was just about money and status. But seeing you here, seeing these people, I realize success is so much more than that." Robert nodded. "Go on." "It's about character, right? How you treat people, how you contribute to the world. I spent years thinking I was better than others just because I drove a clean car and wore nice clothes. But deep down, what difference does that make? And now? Now I'm starting to understand that who I really am has nothing to do with what I wear or where I work. It's about how I treat the people around me." Robert smiled for the first time since Michael had met him. "You're on the right path, Michael." On Thursday, something happened that would completely change Michael's perspective. Mr. Walter fell ill at work and had to be taken to the hospital. It was high blood pressure, nothing too serious, but he needed to stay under observation for a few hours. Robert arrived at the shop as soon as he heard the news and immediately offered to take Mr. Walter to the hospital. Without a second thought, Michael volunteered to go with them. At the hospital, while waiting for the test results, Michael watched how Robert treated Mr. Walter, with kindness, respect, and genuine concern. It wasn't an act. It was real. "Robert," Mr. Walter said from the gurney, "you didn't have to come. I know you have more important things to do." "There's nothing more important than this, Mr. Walter. You're family to me." Michael felt a tightness in his chest. When was the last time he had shown that kind of genuine care for someone? When they found out Mr. Walter was fine and could go home, Robert insisted on taking him personally. Michael went along and witnessed another revealing moment. Mr. Walter lived in a modest house on the outskirts of New York City. Robert helped him inside, spoke with his wife, and made sure he had everything he needed. Before leaving, he discreetly left an envelope on the kitchen table. "Robert, what's this?" asked Mrs. Mary, Mr. Walter's wife. "It's to cover the hospital bills and a few days off so he can recover. Don't argue with me, Mrs. Mary. You know how stubborn I am." In the car on the way back, Michael couldn't stay silent. "Robert, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." Why do you do this? I mean, you're already wealthy, successful. Why do you still care so much about every employee? Robert drove in silence for a few minutes before answering, "Do you have children, Michael?" "I do. A 16-year-old daughter." "And what do you want most for her in life?" "For her to be happy, fulfilled, to have opportunities." "Exactly. That's how I see every person who works with me, as if they were my family. Mr. Walter taught me so much when I was young. Brandon is building his future. Each of them has dreams, fears, people who depend on them." Robert stopped the car at a red light and looked at Michael. "When you have the power to help someone and you don't, you're wasting an opportunity to make a difference in the world. And in the end, Michael, the only thing that really matters is the difference we've made in people's lives." Michael went home that night completely changed. He sat on the porch with Jennifer and told her about the day, about Mr. Walter, about Robert's actions. "Jennifer, I've been wrong about so many things. I know, love. But what matters is that you're realizing it now. No, you don't understand. It's not just about that day in the car. It's about how I've lived my life, how I've treated people, what kind of example I've been for Melissa." Jennifer took her husband's hand. "It's never too late to change, Michael. Robert is giving you an opportunity many people never get in life. A second chance." "Exactly. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" Michael looked up at the stars and, for the first time in a long while, felt hopeful about the future. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Friday was the last day at the shop. Michael arrived earlier than usual, wanting to make the most of every moment of the experience. There was something different in the air, a sense that something important was about to happen. Robert showed up early, accompanied by an elegant woman Michael didn't recognize. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce Dr. Catherine Miller, our organizational psychologist. She'll be speaking with you about this week's experience." Dr. Catherine was a woman around 50 years old, with graying hair and a kind yet piercing gaze. Michael immediately felt she could see right through people. "Good morning. I'd like each of you to tell me what you learned this week, but I want total honesty. Don't say what you think we want to hear." Michael was the last to speak. He listened as the other drivers talked about respect, the dignity of work, and the importance of not judging by appearances. They said all the right things, but Michael could tell some still hadn't truly grasped the lesson of the experience. When his turn came, he took a deep breath. "Dr. Catherine, I learned that I'm an idiot." The room fell completely silent. Robert raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Go on," said the psychologist. "I spent 42 years of my life thinking I was better than others for the most superficial reasons. Cars, clothes, money. But this week I discovered the most admirable people I know are the ones I used to consider beneath me." Michael looked at Mr. Walter, who had returned to work that day. "Mr. Walter has a wisdom I'll never have. Brandon has a determination that shames me. Robert has a generosity that makes me question if I'll ever be half the man he is." The words poured from Michael's heart, unfiltered. "I always thought I was successful, but really, I was just a bitter guy who needed to put others down to feel important. And the worst part is my daughter was seeing it, learning from my example." Michael paused, emotional. This week wasn't punishment. It was a gift. The chance to see myself in the mirror for the first time in my life. And I didn't like what I saw, but now I know I can change. Dr. Catherine took a few notes before addressing the group. "Very well. Let's do an exercise. I want each of you to write down 3 concrete actions you'll implement in your life starting today. Not philosophy, practical actions." Michael took the paper and began writing without hesitation. 1. I'll treat every passenger with the same respect, no matter their appearance or background. 2. I'll teach my daughter, through example, that a person's worth lies in their character. 3. I'll find a way to give back what I've learned here by helping others, just as Robert helped me. When everyone finished, Dr. Catherine collected the papers. "I'll keep these. In 3 months, we'll schedule individual meetings to check your progress. Remember, real change takes time and constant effort." After the meeting, as the other drivers said their goodbyes, Robert pulled Michael aside for a private talk. "How do you feel?" "Different. Scared, too. I'm afraid I won't be able to keep this change going." "That fear's normal. Real change is hard. But you have something many people don't." "What's that?" "The courage to admit you were wrong. That's rare, Michael. Most people would rather live a lie than face the truth about themselves." Robert stood and walked to the shop window. "I have a proposal for you. No need to answer now. Think it over." Michael's heart raced. "I'm starting a new project, a personal transformation program for drivers who, like you, need a second chance. It'd expand on what we did here this week." "And what would my role be?" "I'd like you to coordinate the program." Michael was stunned. "Me? But I'm exactly the kind of person who needs this program." "Exactly. Who better to help people with prejudices than someone who's gone through the same transformation? You'd understand the resistance, the fears, the excuses." "Robert, I don't know if I'm qualified for this. Technical skills we can teach, but real empathy, a genuine desire to help, that can't be taught, and you've shown you have that." Michael fell silent, processing the offer. "Can I ask why you're offering this to me?" Robert smiled. "Because I believe in second chances. And because sometimes the people who've made the most mistakes are the ones who can best help others avoid making them." Michael felt tears in his eyes. "I accept, but on one condition." "What?" "I want to keep driving too, at least a few hours a day, so I don't forget where I came from." Robert extended his hand. "Deal." The following months brought intense transformation in Michael's life. He underwent training in basic psychology, communication techniques, and conflict resolution. But the most important part was his hands-on work with other drivers. The program's first group included 15 drivers from different parts of New York City, all with histories of complaints about rudeness or prejudice. Michael greeted them with the same brutal honesty he'd once used on himself. "My name is Michael, and I'm a former bigot." That's how he began every session. "I'm not here to judge you, because I know exactly how you feel. I'm here to show that change is possible." One story that deeply affected Michael was Benjamin's, a 55-year-old driver who'd grown up in an extremely prejudiced family and carried those behaviors into his work. "Michael, I was raised hearing that black folks belong in the fields, that people from the South are lazy, that the poor are worthless. How do I undo 55 years of poison in my head?" "One day at a time, Benjamin. I changed 42 years of prejudice. You can change 55. Michael developed his own method based on real-world experiences. He took drivers to see different realities, to hear stories of resilience, to work side by side with people they'd once judged. One of the most moving cases was Mark, a young driver who discriminated against the elderly, thinking they were all grumpy and difficult. Michael had him spend a week at a nursing home, helping with daily care. "Michael, I never imagined old folks could be so fun," Mark said afterward. "Mr. Anthony told me war stories better than any movie, and Mrs. Rose taught me how to make the most delicious cake." "And what did you learn?" "That I was missing out on amazing people just because they were older than me." The program began delivering surprising results. Participant drivers' ratings improved dramatically. But more than that, many became agents of change, influencing colleagues and family. Michael's daughter, Melissa, watched her father's transformation closely. She'd become his biggest cheerleader and advisor. "Dad, you know the most important change I've noticed in you?" "What?" "You stopped speaking badly about people. Before, when you came home, you always had some complaint about a passenger. Now you share interesting stories about the people you meet." It was true. Michael had developed a genuine curiosity about others. Every passenger was a chance to learn something new, to hear a different story. One day during a ride, Michael picked up a passenger who immediately reminded him of his old self, a well-dressed executive heading to a corporate event. "I hope you're more competent than the last driver I had," the man said, adjusting his tie. A completely unsuitable fellow, barely spoke proper English. Michael glanced in the rearview mirror and saw himself from months before. "Do you think the way a person speaks determines their competence?" "Of course it does. Presentation is key in business. You can't trust someone who can't even express themselves properly. Michael drove in silence for a few minutes, planning his response. Can I tell you a story? If it's quick. I met a man who started working at 15 in an auto repair shop. He could barely read when he began. Today he owns one of the largest companies in his field in the country. That's the exception. Maybe, but it made me think, how many exceptional people do we overlook just because they don't fit our idea of presentable? The executive stayed quiet for the rest of the ride. When they reached the destination, he left a larger tip than usual. Thank you for the reflection, he said, stepping out of the car. Michael smiled. He was planting seeds just as Robert had done with him. The transformation program was starting to get media attention. Robert was invited to several interviews, always mentioning Michael's work as fundamental to the project's success. What makes me proudest isn't creating the program, Robert said in a television interview. It's discovering that one of the people who initially seemed like the biggest problem became the solution. Michael proves everyone deserves a second chance. Michael watched the interview with his family, moved. Jennifer held his hand. I'm proud of you. Of who I became or who I always was. Of who you chose to become. That night, Michael received a call that would change the course of his life again. It was Robert. Michael, I need to talk to you urgently. Can you come to my house? Robert lived in a large but understated home in an upscale neighborhood of New York City. When Michael arrived, he found Robert and a woman he didn't know waiting in the living room. Michael, I'd like you to meet my wife, Susan. Susan was an elegant woman around 40, with a warm smile that reminded Michael of her husband's. Nice to meet you, Michael. Robert talks about you a lot. The pleasure is mine. Robert served coffee and got straight to the point. Michael, our company received an offer to expand the program nationwide. A major corporation wants to implement our methodology across the United States. Michael's heart raced. That's incredible. It is, but it would mean a radical change in structure. We'd need regional coordinators, a bigger team, standardized processes. And where do I fit into this? I'd like you to be my partner in this expansion. Michael nearly dropped his coffee cup. Partner? Robert, Before you answer, let me explain my vision. This program works because it was created by people who've gone through real transformation. I lived through prejudice when I was a mechanic. You lived through the process of change. That authenticity is priceless. Susan spoke for the first time. Michael, I've followed your journey through Robert. Your transformation was genuine. That's rare and valuable. But I don't have the capital to be a partner in a company. The capital isn't money, Robert interrupted. It's knowledge, experience, credibility. You help develop a methodology that's changing lives. That's worth more than any amount of money. Michael stayed silent, trying to process the magnitude of the offer. Can I ask you something? Why do you believe in me so much? Robert smiled. Because you remind me of myself 20 years ago. Full of flaws, but with a genuine desire to change. And because I've seen you work. I've seen how dedicated you are to every driver in the program, how seriously you take each transformation. And because, Susan added, people who've gone through big transformations are the best at inspiring change in others. Michael took a deep breath. I accept, but with a few conditions. Name them. First, I want to keep direct contact with the drivers. I don't want to become just an administrator. Second, I want a portion of the profits to always go towards social projects. And third, I want you to promise to be brutally honest if I ever start getting too full of myself. Robert laughed. Deal on all three conditions. And that's how Michael became a partner in one of the most respected personal transformation companies in the country. But professional success was only one part of the change in his life. His relationship with Jennifer had grown dramatically stronger. She saw a depth and sensitivity in her husband that hadn't been there before. Melissa became his biggest fan, always bringing friends to meet the transformational dad. Dad, you know what's the coolest thing about what you do? Melissa asked during dinner one evening. Tell me. It's that you prove people can really change. My friends are amazed when I tell them you used to be completely different. And are you embarrassed by who I was before? No. I'm proud of who you've become. The company grew quickly. Within 2 years, the program was being implemented in 15 states across the United States. Michael traveled constantly, training new coordinators, tracking results, and refining methodologies. On every trip, he made sure to drive at least a few hours as a rideshare driver. It was his way of staying connected to reality and continuing to learn. During one of these trips to Miami, Michael had an experience that left a deep mark on him. He picked up a passenger, a young black man around 20 years old, a medical student. "First time in Miami?" the young man asked. "No, but first time here for work. I'm from New York City." "Nice. What do you do?" Michael hesitated. He still felt awkward talking about his work. "I develop personal transformation programs for rideshare drivers." "Seriously? That's really interesting. Can you tell me more?" Michael explained the program, his own transformation, and the results they were achieving. "Man, that's incredible," the young man said. "You have no idea how important this is. I'm a med student, and I drive to pay for school. I've been through every kind of humiliation you can imagine." "How so?" "People get in the car and automatically assume I'm ignorant, that I don't understand anything beyond driving. I've had passengers talk about me like I wasn't even there, debating whether it was safe to ride with me." Michael felt a familiar anger, but now it was directed at the prejudiced people. "How do you handle it?" "Oh, I always respond with politeness and knowledge. When someone underestimates me, I start talking about medicine, about my studies. The look on their faces is priceless." "Have you ever thought about giving up?" "Never. My mum's a housekeeper, my dad's a sanitation worker. They sacrificed everything so I could study. I won't let them down because of a few ignorant people." Michael was moved by the young man's story. "What's your name?" "Tyler. Tyler Sanders." "Tyler, you remind me of someone I know, a man who also faced a lot of prejudice and is now one of the most respected businessmen in the country." "Really?" "Robert Williams. He started as a mechanic and now owns one of the biggest auto repair chains in the US, and he's my business partner." Tyler stopped the car at a red light and turned to look at Michael. "You're partners with Robert Williams?" "I am. Why?" "Man, that guy's my idol. I have an article about him taped to my bedroom wall. He's proof you can succeed in life by being honest and hardworking." Michael smiled. "Would you like to meet him in person?" "Are you serious?" "No joke. He's giving a talk at the State University here in Miami next month. I can arrange a private conversation with him." "Oh my God, you do that?" "Of course. People like you deserve all the support they can get." Michael took Tyler's contact information and made sure the meeting happened. Robert was impressed by the young man's story and offered him a full scholarship, along with a paid internship at the company during vacations. "This is the kind of person who makes all our work worthwhile," Robert said to Michael. "Tyler is going to be a doctor, but I'm sure he'll carry with him the lesson that everyone deserves respect." This experience made Michael realize his work had a far greater reach than he'd imagined. He wasn't just transforming prejudiced drivers, he was creating a network of more empathetic and respectful people. The program's success drew international attention. Michael and Robert were invited to present their methodology at human resources conferences in Europe and the United Kingdom. "I never imagined I'd one day be giving talks to business leaders in London," Michael told Jennifer before a trip. "I always knew you had the potential for great things. You were just pointed in the wrong direction. Did you really believe in me even when I was unbearable?" "Honey, beneath all that arrogance, I always saw a good person trying to hide. You just needed someone like Robert to help you find that person. The international talks were a success. The American method of personal transformation began to be adapted for other countries and contexts. Michael became a global reference in behavioral change, but the most special moment of his journey came 2 years later, during Melissa's high school graduation. She had been chosen as the class speaker and surprised everyone with her speech. "My classmates, when we think of our heroes, we usually imagine people who were always perfect, who never made mistakes, who were born ready for success. But I want to talk about a different kind of hero, the one who had the courage to admit they were wrong and change." Michael felt his chest tighten. My father taught me that a person's strength isn't in never falling, but in getting back up every time they do. That courage isn't about feeling no fear, but doing what's right even when afraid. And that true success isn't about what we achieve for ourselves, but how much we help others achieve for themselves. Melissa looked directly at Michael in the audience. Dad, thank you for showing me that people can change, grow, and evolve. That it doesn't matter where we start, but where we choose to go. You're my hero not because you're perfect, but because you never gave up on being better. Michael openly wept. Jennifer held his hand, equally moved. After the ceremony, Robert approached Michael. See where your transformation has led. You didn't just change your life, you're influencing the next generation. Robert, can I ask you something that's always puzzled me? Of course. Why did you decide to give me a second chance that day? Why not just fire me? Robert thought for a moment. Because someone once gave me a second chance when I needed it. At 20, I made a serious mistake at the shop where I worked. I damaged the engine of an expensive car through negligence. The owner could have sued me, ruined me for good. What happened? He made me repay the damage by working for free on weekends for 6 months. During that time, he taught me about responsibility, honoring commitments, and second chances. That man changed my life. And you decided to do the same for me. Exactly. I believe everyone we meet is an opportunity to repay some kindness we've received. You were my chance to repay the second chance I got. And now? Now you're repaying it to hundreds of people through our program. It's an unbroken chain of transformation. 5 years after that first ride, Michael was in his office reviewing reports from the national program when he received an unexpected call. Hello, this is Michael. Michael, this is Tyler, remember me, the med student from Miami. Tyler, of course I remember. How are you? Great, I graduated last week. I'm calling to thank you again and share some news. Congratulations on graduating. What's the news? I'm starting my psychiatry residency here in Miami, and I want to develop my master's project on the impact of personal transformation programs on mental health. I'd love to study your work. Michael was moved. It'd be an honor, Tyler, but tell me, why psychiatry? Because of our conversation that day, I realized many relationship issues and prejudices stem from unresolved emotional struggles. I want to help people transform like you did. Tyler, you know you'll have our full support in this research, right? Thank you, Michael. You changed my life, and now I want to help change others. After hanging up, Michael reflected on the call. The seed he'd planted in Tyler was growing into a new tree, one that would bear fruit and plant more seeds. That was the magic of true transformation. It multiplied endlessly. That afternoon, Michael decided to leave the office early and drive for a few hours. It was his way of remembering where he started and continuing to learn from people. His first passenger was an elderly lady going to the hospital for tests. During the ride, she mentioned she was nervous. It's my first time coming to this hospital alone. My husband always came with me, but he passed last month. Michael felt compassion for her. Would you like me to wait and bring you back? You'd do that, but it must be expensive. No extra charge. It'd be my pleasure to help. My boy, there really are good people in this world. Michael waited 2 hours at the hospital, chatted with her on the way back, and even helped her up to her apartment. When she insisted on paying extra, he gently refused. Just pass the kindness along to someone else when you can. Moments like these reminded Michael that true wealth wasn't in his bank account, but in the ability to make a difference in people's lives. At the end of the day, driving home, Michael reflected on his journey. From a prejudiced, arrogant driver, he'd become a social entrepreneur, international speaker, and personal transformation mentor. But more important than any title was becoming a better person. He thought of Robert, who'd believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. He thought of Mr. Walter, who taught him the dignity of work. He thought of Brandon, who showed him age doesn't determine wisdom. He thought of Tyler, who proved transformation multiplies. And he thought of Jennifer and Melissa, who'd loved the man he was and the man he'd become. When he got home, he found a surprise. Jennifer had prepared a special dinner and invited Robert, Susan, and some colleagues from the program to celebrate the company's 5th anniversary. Surprise! Everyone cheered as Michael walked in. "Guys, you didn't have to—" "Of course we did," said Robert. "5 years ago, you were just a troubled driver. Today, you're my partner, my friend, and an inspiration to hundreds." During dinner, each person shared how Michael had impacted their life, stories of transformation, growth, and resilience. When it was Michael's turn to speak, he stood up, moved. "5 years ago, I was a bitter, prejudiced man who judged others to feel superior. If someone had told me I'd be here someday, surrounded by people I love and admire, working to make the world better, I'd have laughed in their face." Michael looked at each face around the table. "But you all taught me that change is possible, that people can grow, that mistakes can become lessons, that falls can become the push for greater flights. Robert, thank you for seeing potential in me that I didn't know existed. Mr. Walter, thank you for teaching me that wisdom has nothing to do with a diploma. Brandon, thank you for showing me that determination has no age limit." Michael turned to his family. "Jennifer, thank you for not giving up on me even when I had given up on myself. Melissa, thank you for giving me a reason to want to be a better man. And to everyone in the program, thank you for letting me be part of your transformations. You taught me that helping others grow is the most powerful way to grow ourselves." Michael raised his glass. A toast to second chances, to real transformation, and to the power of the human spirit to always reinvent itself. "Cheers," everyone replied in unison. Later, when the guests had left, Michael sat on the porch with Jennifer, gazing at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I'm thinking I have so much to be grateful for, and that I still have so much to do." "What do you mean?" "The national program is established, but imagine if we could expand it to schools, to companies in other sectors, to prisons. Imagine the impact we could have." Jennifer smiled. "You never stop, do you?" "I've discovered something addictive about helping people transform. Every story of change gives me energy to help more people." "And do you know which transformation story impresses me the most?" "Which one?" "Yours. You didn't just change. You became an agent of change. It's beautiful to see." Michael took his wife's hand. "Jennifer, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If you could go back in time and change something in our story, what would you change?" Jennifer thought for a moment. "You know, as painful as it was to live with the old version of you, I wouldn't change a thing." "Why?" "Because if you hadn't been who you were, you wouldn't have become who you are. Your past failures are what give credibility to your work today. You can help prejudiced people because you were once one of them. You've always been so wise." "No, my love. I just learned to see potential where others see problems. Robert taught me that too." That night, Michael slept peacefully. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't anxious about the future or regretful of the past. He was present, grateful, fulfilled. But fate still had surprises in store for him. The next morning, Michael received a call that would change the course of his life once again. It was from the Department of Education. "Mr. Michael, this is Dr. Patricia Ferguson from the Department of Education. I'd like to discuss the possibility of implementing your personal transformation program in public schools across the country." Michael nearly dropped the phone. "What do you mean, Doctor?" "We've been following the results of your work and believe your methodology could be adapted to combat bullying and prejudice in schools. It would be a pilot project, but with potential for nationwide reach." Michael scheduled a meeting for the following week. When he told Robert, his partner was ecstatic. "Michael, do you realize the scale of this? If we can implement our methodology in schools, we could impact millions of young people." "It's terrifying to think about." "Why terrifying?" "Because it means our responsibility is even greater. We can't afford to make mistakes." "And we won't. We have the experience, the tested methodology, the passion, and most importantly, we have the humility to keep learning." The meeting at the department was a success. The pilot project would be implemented in 100 schools across 10 different states. Michael would be responsible for training the educators and monitoring the results. "It's surreal to think everything started with that run," Michael said to Robert as they left the Department of Education. "Actually, it all began with your willingness to change. The run was just the catalyst. Robert, can I confess something to you? Always. Sometimes I'm afraid this is all a dream, and I'll wake up being the same prejudiced person I was before. Robert stopped walking and looked seriously at Michael. Do you know the difference between true transformation and superficial transformation? What? True transformation changes the heart first, then the behavior. And when the heart truly changes, there's no going back. And do you think my heart has truly changed? Michael, you dedicate your life to helping others overcome the same struggles you did. You gave up a more comfortable life to commit to social causes. You treat with kindness and respect people you once would have looked down on. If that's not true transformation, I don't know what is. Michael felt relieved. Robert always had the right words to ease his doubts. The school project launched 6 months later with significant media attention. Michael and his team developed a specific methodology for teenagers, focused on empathy, respecting differences, and building healthy relationships. One of the first schools they visited was the very school where Melissa had studied. Michael felt a special emotion stepping into the place where his daughter had grown up. Professor Michael, the principal said, it's an honor to have you here. Melissa always spoke about her father's work with such pride. During his talk with the students, Michael shared his story with brutal honesty. He spoke about his prejudices, how he had judged people by their appearance, and how he had almost missed the chance to know Robert because of his misconceptions. You might be thinking, this Professor Michael guy is such an idiot. And you're right, I was an idiot. But the point isn't whether we make mistakes or not. The point is what we do after we realize we've made them. A student raised their hand. Professor, but how do we know when we're being prejudiced? Great question. Prejudice is when we judge someone before knowing them, when we assume things about people based on their looks, accent, neighborhood, or school. Another student asked, what if we've already been prejudiced towards someone? Can we fix it? It's never too late to make things right. You can always apologize, admit your mistake, and change your attitude. What matters is being sincere. After the talk, several students approached Michael to share their own experiences with prejudice, some as victims, others admitting they had unfairly judged their peers. Professor, a girl around 15 said, I always had prejudices against the boys from the outskirts who attend our school. I thought they were all troublemakers. But after your talk, I decided to talk to one of them. I found out he's really smart and helps support his family by working nights. And how do you feel now? Ashamed, but also grateful. I realized I was missing out on knowing amazing people because of my silly prejudices. Stories like this multiplied in every school where the program was implemented. The results were so positive that the Department of Education decided to expand the project to 500 more schools the following year. Michael became a nationally recognized figure, invited to TV shows, published in magazines, and turned into a reference for personal transformation and education. But the recognition that moved him the most came from an unexpected source. During an awards ceremony for innovative educators, Robert took the stage to present the Social Transformation of the Year award. The winner of this category is someone who proves that people can radically change their lives and, in doing so, change the lives of thousands of others. Someone who turned their own flaws into tools to help others overcome similar struggles. Michael was in the audience, unaware that he was the honoree. This man taught me that giving someone a second chance can lead to transformations beyond our imagination. He showed me that believing in people's potential is one of the most powerful forms of love. Robert paused dramatically. Michael Johnson Smith, come receive your award. Michael froze. Jennifer and Melissa, who were sitting beside him, nudged him toward the stage. When he reached it, he was visibly emotional. Robert, Michael, when I met you in that car 5 years ago, I saw a lost, bitter man full of prejudice. Today, I see a leader, a change maker, a man who dedicates his life to making the world better. Robert hugged Michael. Thank you for letting me be part of your transformation, and thank you for turning my bet on you into the best decision I've ever made. Michael took the microphone with trembling hands. I don't deserve this award. The ones who deserve it are all the people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Robert, who saw potential where others would only see a problem. My wife Jennifer, who never gave up on me. My daughter Melissa, who gave me reasons to want to be better. Michael looked at the packed audience. But most of all, this award belongs to every driver, student, educator, and person who had the courage to look in the mirror and decide to change. You are the real heroes of this story. This award carries a simple message. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to apologize. It's never too late to choose to be a better person. And never underestimate the power of a second chance. The audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Michael looked at Robert, who smiled proudly, and felt his life had found its true purpose. After the ceremony, there was a reception where Michael was congratulated by dozens of people. Among them, a special surprise. Tyler, now Dr. Tyler Sanders, a licensed psychiatrist. Michael! What a joy to see you receiving this recognition. Tyler, how are you, Doctor? Great, and with news, I've finished my research on the impact of personal transformation programs. The results are impressive. What kind of results? People who go through structured transformation programs like yours show significant improvements in self-esteem, interpersonal relationships, and even mental health indicators. Your work has scientifically proven impact. That's amazing, Tyler. And there's more. Based on the research, I'm opening a clinic specializing in personal transformation here in Miami. I'd love for you to be my consultants. Michael hugged Tyler, moved. Of course, it would be an honor to help with this project. Once again, Michael saw how one good deed could create an endless chain of positive change. In the following months, Tyler's clinic became a national reference for psychological treatment focused on personal transformation. Michael and Robert's work gained solid scientific backing, further increasing its credibility. The school program expanded to 2,000 educational institutions. Bullying and discrimination rates plummeted in participating schools. Many educators reported significant improvements in the school environment. Michael began receiving invitations to speak at international universities. His personal transformation story became a case study in psychology and business courses. During a lecture at Stanford University, a psychology professor asked a question that deeply marked him. Mr. Williams, in your opinion, what is the most important factor for a successful personal transformation? Michael thought carefully before answering. Professor, there are several important factors. Willingness to change, a supportive environment, help from those close to us. But if I had to choose just one, it would be humility. Could you elaborate? Humility to admit when we're wrong. Humility to ask for help. Humility to accept that people we once judged as inferior can teach us so much. Humility to acknowledge that we always have something to learn. And how does one develop this humility? In my experience, humility comes when we realize our perspective is limited, when we step out of our comfort zone and spend time with different kinds of people, when we stop comparing ourselves to others just to feel superior. The lecture was a resounding success. Several American universities expressed interest in studying the U.S. methodology for personal transformation. On the flight back to the United States, Michael reflected on how much his life had changed, from a prejudiced driver to an international speaker, from someone who judged others to someone who helped people overcome their judgments. When he arrived in New York City, he went straight home. He wanted to be with Jennifer and Melissa, who was now studying psychology at university. "How was your trip, Dad?" Melissa asked. "Amazing, but you know what impressed me the most?" "What?" "Seeing American kids your age so interested in learning about personal transformation. It made me realize what we're doing here has universal relevance." "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always." "I chose psychology because of you. I want to help people transform like you did." Michael was moved. "Melissa, that's the greatest honor you could give me. And I already have my research project planned. I'm going to study how parents' transformations impact their children's development. You'll be my main case study." Jennifer laughed. "Our daughter is going to psychoanalyze you, Michael." Let her. I have nothing to hide. My transformation is documented and available for anyone who wants to study it. That night at dinner, Melissa asked a question that surprised Michael. Dad, do you miss how you used to be? Miss it? Not at all. Why? It's just that sometimes I think you were more carefree before. Now you carry the weight of helping so many people. Michael paused to consider his daughter's question. Melissa, it's true I have more responsibilities now, but do you know the difference? What? Before, I was worried about myself, my image, my superiority. It was an empty worry that led nowhere. Now I worry about being useful, about making a difference in people's lives. It's a worry that gives life meaning. And are you happy? Happier than I ever imagined I could be, because I've learned that true happiness doesn't come from receiving but from giving. Not from being admired, but from admiring others. Not from feeling superior, but from helping others feel valued. Jennifer held her husband's hand, and we're happy seeing you truly happy for the first time. A few days later, Michael received a surprising phone call. A journalist wanted to do a special feature on his story. Mr. Johnson, I'd like to write about personal transformation, and your story is emblematic, but I have a different proposal. How so? I'd like to interview people who knew you before your transformation and compare their accounts with those who met you afterward. It would show concretely how a person can change. Michael felt nervous. What if people said very negative things about who he used to be? Can I think about it? Of course. But I can tell you, I've already spoken informally with a few people, and their testimonies are very interesting. Michael discussed the proposal with Jennifer and Robert. Both encouraged him to accept. Michael, your transformation could inspire so many people. It's worth the risk, Robert said. The piece aired 3 months later and caused a huge stir. The journalist had interviewed former driver colleagues, passengers Michael had mistreated, neighbors, and compared their accounts with testimonies from people who knew him after his transformation. The contrast was striking. People literally described two different individuals. The old Michael was portrayed as arrogant, prejudiced, and disrespectful. The new Michael was seen as humble, empathetic, and inspiring. One interview that impacted Michael the most was with an elderly woman who had been his passenger years earlier. This young man treated me terribly. He went out of his way to show disgust toward me because I was coming from the hospital and my clothes were a little dirty. He made me sit on a towel as if I were an animal. I left that car humiliated, but the piece also showed their later reunion when Michael sought her out to apologize in person. When this young man showed up at my door to apologize, I couldn't believe it. He cried, asked for my forgiveness, said he had completely changed, and he truly had. Today, we're friends. He visits my family, helped my grandson get a job. He's a completely different person. The piece ended with the journalist's question. Mr. Michael, what would you say to people who believe they can't change? I'd say I was the biggest skeptic about personal change. I thought people were born a certain way and never changed. But I've learned we're constantly evolving. We can choose who we want to be every day. And what practical advice would you give? First, have the courage to look in the mirror and admit what needs to change. Second, ask for help. No one transforms alone. Third, be patient with yourself. Real change takes time. And fourth, use your past mistakes as fuel to help others avoid making the same ones. The response to the piece was enormous. Michael received hundreds of messages from people wanting to change their own lives. Many shared stories similar to his, about prejudice, arrogance, and isolation. Robert suggested creating an online support program to meet the demand. Michael, we have a unique opportunity to help people across the entire United States who want to transform but don't have access to our in-person programs. But will it work remotely? We'll find out. How about starting with a pilot project? The online program launched 6 months later and exceeded all expectations. People from every state in the country signed up. There were prejudiced lawyers, intolerant teachers, arrogant business owners, bitter homemakers. Michael developed a specific methodology for virtual support, with group sessions, practical tasks, and individual follow-ups. One participant who stood out to him was Marsha, a business owner from Washington, D.C., who discriminated against employees based on social background. Michael, I always thought I was fair with my employees. But when I started observing myself, I realized I treated people with Southern accents differently, assumed incompetence based on appearance, and only promoted people who looked like me. During the program, Marsha went through self-awareness exercises and exposure to different realities. After 3 months, she had completely transformed her company. I implemented a real diversity program. I promoted people based on merit, not appearance. The result? My company has never been so productive and creative. Diversity brought perspectives I never would have had on my own. Stories like Marsha's multiplied. The online program began forming a nationwide network of transformed individuals who supported each other and spread what they learned in their communities. Michael realized he had created something far greater than a personal transformation program. He had started a social movement for changing mindsets. 5 years after launching the online program, during a conversation with Robert, the two reflected on the impact of their work. Robert, sometimes I'm overwhelmed by how big this has become. It started with my personal transformation and now touches thousands of lives, and it will reach millions. Michael, what you've built here goes far beyond a business. It's a legacy. A legacy? Think about it. How many children are growing up in more tolerant families because of our work? How many young people are being taught by more empathetic teachers? How many employees are being treated with greater dignity by bosses who went through the program? Michael had never considered it from that perspective. Every person we transform goes on to transform others around them. It's an endless chain reaction of positive change. And the most beautiful part, Robert added, is that it all started with you having the courage to admit you were wrong and wanting to change. That night, Michael talked to Melissa, who was finishing her last year of psychology, about his conversation with Robert. Dad, you've truly created an incredible legacy. My generation is growing up more tolerant because of your work. How so? In college, during internships, in everyday life, I see young people who've been impacted by your program, either directly or through their parents or teachers. It's a generation more aware of biases and more open to change. Does that make you proud? Very. But do you know what makes me proudest? What? Seeing that my father didn't just change to improve his own life, but to improve the lives of others. That's love in its purest form. Michael was moved by his daughter's words. Melissa, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think I've made up for all the mistakes I made in the past? Melissa thought for a moment. Dad, I think that's the wrong question. How so? The question isn't whether you've made up for past mistakes. It's how many people you've helped avoid making those same mistakes. And in that regard, the answer is clear. Thousands. You've always been wise, my dear. I learned from the best personal transformation teacher I know. 2 years later, when Michael turned 50, Robert organized a surprise party, bringing together people from every stage of his transformation journey. There was Mr. Walter, now retired, but still active as a company advisor. Brandon, who had graduated as an engineer and opened his own workshop. Tyler, who had become a nationally recognized expert in transformation psychology. Marsha, who had turned her company into a model of diversity. But the biggest surprise was the presence of Mrs. Mary, the elderly woman Michael had mistreated years earlier and who had later become his friend. Mrs. Mary, you came. Of course I did, my dear. I wouldn't miss the party of the man who taught me that people can truly change. Throughout the celebration, each person shared a story about how Michael had impacted their life, heartfelt accounts of transformation, growth, and hope. When it was Michael's turn to speak, he was visibly emotional. 50 years. I spent the first 42 as someone I'd be ashamed to know today, but I've spent the last 8 as someone I can finally respect. Michael looked around at every face in the room. All of you have taught me that transformation isn't a destination, it's a journey. That change isn't an event, it's a daily practice. That growth doesn't happen in isolation, but through interaction with people different from us. Today I can say I'm grateful for having been who I was, because it allowed me to understand and help others going through the same struggles. I'm grateful for every mistake I made, because each one turned into a lesson I could share. Michael paused, looking especially at Robert. And I'm forever grateful for finding people who believed in my potential even when I didn't, who gave me second chances when I didn't deserve them, who loved me not for who I was, but for who I could become. That's why I want to make a public commitment to you all. I'll dedicate the rest of my life to repaying every chance I was given, helping others discover they too can transform. The party went on late into the night, but the most special moment came when Michael and Robert found themselves alone on the balcony, overlooking New York City. Robert, can I confess something to you? Always. Sometimes I still struggle to believe all of this really happened, that I've truly changed so much. Why? Because it felt so natural, you know? It didn't feel forced. It was like I was just becoming who I was always meant to be. Robert smiled. That's the mark of real transformation, Michael. When it's genuine, it doesn't feel artificial. It feels like we're simply finding our true selves. And do you think our work really makes a difference in the world? Michael, look around you. Look at the people who were here today. Each one has touched the lives of dozens of others. And those people will touch dozens more. It's an endless ripple effect. But sometimes I wonder, will we ever reach enough people? Michael, we'll never change everyone, and that's not our responsibility. Our job is to plant seeds. Some will sprout right away, others may take years, and some might never grow. But our part is to keep planting. And do you think we've planted enough seeds? Robert gestured to the glowing city below. Every light out there represents a family. If we've positively impacted even a small fraction of them, every effort was worth it. Michael fell silent, reflecting on his friend and partner's words. Robert, what's your biggest dream for the future? My greatest dream is that one day programs like ours won't be necessary, that people will naturally treat each other with respect and dignity, that prejudice will be a thing of the past. Do you think we'll live to see that? Maybe not completely, but we'll live to see a world significantly better than the one we found, and our children will live in an even better one. That alone makes every effort worth it. Exactly. End of story. So, what did you think of this incredible journey of transformation? Michael showed us it's never too late to change, and that our worst traits can become our greatest strengths in helping others. Share in the comments. Do you believe people can truly change like Michael did? Tell us your own stories of transformation. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.